Both my parents they were very cautious of it. I remember clearly when my mom was considering going back to work that she and my dad took me out to lunch. It'd be one thing if they gathered all the kids together, but which they did, but there was also a process of let's talk to each kid individually and make sure that they think it's okay. I can still remember what I ate.
Well, I was supportive of the idea, and I'm trying to think of the reasons why now. Well, one, I think, she had the potential to do good things, and that I wanted to see that go forward. We thought we saw a way to the family could function if she were part-time or full-time. The second income was no bad idea either.
Well, Tom was always very supportive. He was, very broad-minded about whatever it was that I had on my plate or whatever my opportunities were. And he never thought, so far as I knew, he never thought, how is this going to affect me? Am I still going to have my dinner ready by 6 o'clock at night?
That time, 1971, would have probably been a good time for me to think about something like this. It was 10 years earlier that I'd become the only infectious disease consultant at the then Peter Bent Brigham Hospital. It became Brigham and Women's. So for some years I had to do all the consultations. So I had kind of a demanding time, and I was doing research part-time. By 1971, the infectious disease division had grown to 2 or 3 people. It wasn't just me anymore. Fortuitously, that shift edging more towards research in my career made her going back to work easier, I think, because the flexibility in scheduling that it allowed. The thing that triggered it was her meeting Ernie Sargent in a department store. He's a very tough guy. He was the one who met Ruth in the department store, Filene's basement, maybe, for all I know, likely. Likely she was there. I don't know what he was doing there. But he was the one who called back and said, he suggested relaunching. Have you thought about it? Isn't that strange?
I remember it well, that I was looking, it was the day before Father's Day, and I was there looking for gifts for Tom. Ran into Ernie Sargent, and I think it was later that he called me up and said that he had been talking to others in the firm and that people generally thought that I should be working. And I had been thinking that myself.
Well, I certainly remember Ernie Sargent. I mean, he was a giant at the firm. And I think the first word that might come to mind when someone mentions Ernie Sargent was gruff. The idea that he would run into Ruth O'Brien and say, I think you should come back to the firm. In a way it kind of blows my mind, because it's not what you would expect from someone who is kind of an old school Brahmin, I think, in the city. But he knew what he saw in Ruth O'Brien, and it didn't matter to him what conventions might be. It sounds like he wanted her back and he was ready to help make it happen. It really goes to show you never know about people. You might think you know what you're seeing, but they can really surprise you.
And I think it's credit to Ruth. The reason Ernie Sargent thought of it is that he knew talent when he saw it, and he knew it wasn't common. And therefore, that was probably overriding in his mind and making him do something that none of his background would suit him for, particularly call and say, why don't you think about coming back?
If I was going to work on Saturday, which I did often, I would bring anybody that wanted to come.
One time she set me up in one of the partners' offices. She put me in there, and I did some homework, but I think I bought a lot of cheese popcorn in the vending machine, and I was eating a lot of cheese popcorn, and it got everywhere, and I didn't clean up after myself. And the partner, I think, came in and talked to my mom on Monday and was like, I just opened my desk drawer to get some legal papers, and there's about 6 pounds of cheese popcorn in there.
It was very hectic, but my folks were very organized.
I wasn't I wasn't as good at organizing kids and making sure they had their right clothes and things like that. But I could do carpools.
And the other mothers thought it was a riot that Tom O'Brien was doing these carpools and was one of the girls for these purposes. And some of the husbands, I guess, thought it was beneath his status to be doing some of this stuff. But he just thought it was a joke. The kids seemed to love it.
There were 6 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, my grandmother, a parakeet. I'm not kidding. That house was a kind of madness sometimes. Lovely madness, but madness still the same. I don't know how they worked it out, but they worked it out pretty well. We're all here. We're all alive. I don't know how they did it.
Well, most of all, I remember Justin coming. That was the main thing I remember.
The big surprise was when my brother Justin was born in December of '72, and she was given, I think she was given 2 months maternity leave. And then I think it was only after 3 weeks, they told her, we need you back right away. And so can you come back?
I'm the youngest. My mother went back to work shortly before I was born, and then took a brief maternity leave when I was born, and then went right back to work.
Well, when Ruth made partner, it was a big step forward. They'd only had one woman partner before, which is kind of, in these times, looking back, would seem remarkable for such a big law firm.
She made partner. I remember that being huge. I remember my mother coming home and telling her mother, who lived with us, my grandmother, Maudie, that she had made partner. And, you can imagine what that was like for a woman who was then practically, 90, who lived with us and had grown up in an era when Irish were discriminated against in Boston. And my grandmother's watching her daughter, who went to Vassar and Yale on full scholarships, become a law partner. It's pretty emotional, pretty amazing.
As an attorney, I've known and worked with, over the years, a number of people, a number of women whose careers were really starting in the 70s and who faced a lot of challenges at that time as women trying to make it in that profession, and sort of considered themselves trailblazers, and really were in a lot of ways trailblazers for women in the profession. What was always remarkable to me in hearing those stories was realizing that my mother was 15 or 20 years ahead of them in terms of what she was facing and trying to be successful as an attorney. And the other thing that was really remarkable about it is that she, my whole life, has never considered herself a trailblazer and is in a lot of ways completely unaware, was completely unself-conscious about what it is that she was accomplishing. She just looked at it as sort of what she wanted to do, what she had to do in order to be successful, and that's what she focused on.
But it wasn't a sense that we're doing, now you can look back at it and say, oh, this was pivotal, this was important as an example of something. But at the time, you don't think that at all. You think, well, we might get away with this. So I think that's probably how more of what it was like. We could do this, and it would be helpful.
I have great admiration for Ruth O'Brien and for what she did. I know she won't say it was gutsy, but to those of us who were associates and climbed the ranks at Ropes, all of us who gazed on her, we thought she was pretty extraordinary. And her example, it inspired us.
When do I accuse her of crimes?
I have a list of grievances I'd like to air. Things she did wrong. We weren't allowed to watch TV that much.
Kids know better. Well, they haven't improved the species.
I remember her getting off the phone with a friend and saying, I just finished cutting 100 finger and toenails. She still does them, I'm just kidding.
Luke, unfortunately, remembers everything. Luke is a good kid.
Am I getting paid for this? Because very little of this has been true. I want money. Is this, what's your name, Ruth? Ruth O'Brien. Okay, we'll go with that. That was good.